Ladies and gentlemen, uh, this is Aniruddha Bose from Gopalpur Mayfair Palm Beach Resort. I've never been in Facebook before. This is the first time I've been in Facebook Live. Usually, it has been a public ceremony right from my opening of my first book, Onnishon, which was in Maharaja Banquets, then later on, several times in Gorki Shodon, and finally in Gobind Shodon. Finally, I gave up the idea of public opening after 2012. There's a good reason why I gave it up. In all these where eminent figures, notable personalities were present at the opening ceremony. Then one day, after the opening at Ravindra Shodon by my childhood friend and batchmate Shashi Tharoor, I realized, do I need anyone to endorse the credibility of my writing? And at that moment, it dawned to me that I don't need anyone. My writing is good enough to give it uh, the authenticity or credibility. I don't need anyone beside to prove my identity. And from that time, it has been a silent launch every time. This launch, particularly, I put it on the web to actually communicate with the people in person. I was into writing social and philosophical literature for a long time, mm, uh, which had been bestsellers like Only Shop Day, uh, Dakar. Then after that, it was my publisher in Kolkata Book Fair uh, came up with the idea that the maximum sale of books is in either it's a suspense thriller or something humorous. Now my sense of humor is not that good, so I thought I'll give it a try with suspense thriller. As I was pondering with the idea of writing a suspense thriller, uh, it dawned to me what I should write on. Now, there has been the Sherlock Holmes has been the standard detective in most of the novels. But when I thought about it, anyone go to any detective for private, for a detection of a murder or or any crime that is committed? It's usually the police or some journalists investigating, uh, and moreover, detectives don't have certain rights. They can't enter into government records. They can't enter into bank records and all those kinds of things. So the detective, which basically was sold, was a myth. It all started actually. This detective concept started in 18. If I remember, it was in 1833. Francis Vidoc, a Frenchman who was an ex-convict who started this agency of investigation, and later he was arrested for basically extraction of money, where he was jailed and fined 3,000 francs. Later on, it was actually Edgar Allan Poe. I think it was in 1840, if I remember it correctly, brought in the first concept of in his character C. Augustus Dupin. But then on it went on. Then obviously there were numerous people, and ultimately Conan Doyle came up with this bright idea of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was a fictitious detective, but he had a social message. That was during the Victorian and Edwardian period, and Sherlock Holmes basically um, um, came with reform thoughts as well as thoughts basically, but there was a class difference in some of Sherlock Holmes. He took money from the upper class, and basically most of the convicts of the villains or whatever you call it were from the lower class. So he maintained his class difference, which is typical of a British society all the time. They always maintain the class. Even the Scottish and the Welsh are foreigners to the English, and that's another bit of the story. But anyway, coming back to the old question of, so the detective, which is basically apocryphal and Tram D. O'Neill does not work in today's concept. So I thought, what should I do? Why don't the reader search for the detective as well as the murderer? Investigations can be done by anyone, a police or a journalist or whoever is officially entitled to do that. And ultimately, the final jackpot will come. And with this idea, I wrote my first Bengali novel, which was Chokro, and later translated in English by my elder brother, Parthapratim Roy, as Fulcrum. Here, the reader is in quest of uh, the murderer as well as the detective. And until the last 30 or 40 pages, you couldn't even make out who the detective is, and until the end, you can't make out who the murderer is. So it is the keeping the suspense. This suspense is very important in any detective novel. I'll give you the difference between a suspense novel and a thriller. They are different entities, which I'll define to you later on. Anyway, after that, after this Fulcrum, I wrote, I said, why don't, there was a thing in Fulcrum I put in, there must be a philosophy. So in the end, I added a philosophy which basically came from Plato, is the person who you consider the murderer is prove the murderer. What is he? He is in the third stage, philosophical stage. Now, whether Hitler was a murderer or not, this has been debated over centuries and ages. So, the concept of in the third stage is we are doing good for humanity. Now, that good is interpreted in different phases, from Zarathustra to Socrates to um, mm, Ranjit Singh, to numerous characters, Joan of Arc, if I can remember a few. So the concept of actually what is right and what is wrong is actually a relative concept which has changed with ages. And anyway, coming back to the from Chokro, the first thriller I embarked on, it was actually Shashi who told me, why don't you start writing in English? And that's my first book I wrote in English. Basically, it was Pursuit. Here, I delved deep into it rather than writing a simple thriller where let's put in some substance. We are talking about philosophies. We are talking about here. I was talking about global geoeconomics and my visions of global geoeconomics. This was written in 2012, and ultimately, the visions which I stated are slowly coming true. So obviously, the vision which I had 6 years back is partly coming true. Maybe the rest will come true in the long run. Now, I have been repeatedly emphasizing the difference between a suspense and a thriller. This is what Hitchcock defines. Suspense is you are in anticipation of something is going to happen. Actually, it's not happening. It's something you are anticipating something happening, murder or suspense or bomb is going to blast or something. Some next something will unveil which is unknown to you. That is actually suspense. Thriller is it happens. So there is a difference between suspense and a thriller. Thriller is if you are thinking of a bomb blast, you can see the bomb blast. And in a suspense, the bomb is kept ticking. You are showing that it is ticking with the anticipation it will burst. So there is a difference between suspense and thriller. Now, that's where I tried to amalgamate the two, the thriller and the suspense together in the same platform in Pursuit. And at the end of the day, in Pursuit, basically the protagonist is actually a blind monk living in West Sikkim monastery, Panchit Singh Dizongpa. And through as I go through the material, all the killings and other things. And by the way, of the killings, I want to tell you, either in Chokro, Fulcrum, or in the pursuit, I have not used the standard pistols and knives. I've used scientific murder weapons, which has not been described in any book so far. So those are from my scientific background. So, but at the end of the day, in any of the thrillers, was it's fast moving with the suspense, everything involved, fine. But in the end, what is important is actually you are looking for. Uh, there must be a take-home message, and this character, which is Vanjet Zongpa in Pursuit, ultimately gives the humanity a new message. Yes, we are fighting for rights, power, money, whatever you are, geoeconomic, political superiority, whatever. But at the end of the day, what is important is what message, take home message of you to humanity through a say thriller or geoeconomics or whatever. That was what I wrote it. Finished Pursuit. Then came to writing another thriller, and this was a well-researched one. It is on genetics and genetic cloning. Now, Siddhartha is one of my favorite writers. Siddhartha Mukherjee has written on genes, but basically, it is a non-fiction type of thing. People don't read books these days. That's the problem. So I thought of giving it a thriller facade, a coating, whatever you call it, and talk science. Now I'm a student of science. I've always talked of science in all my novels, where be it be vertical time or Newton's color theory. Here I will try to talk on genetics and genetic cloning and the origin of research, genetic research, and origin of race. Here, there is a gulf difference happening in the world between racial superiority. And if you go through Eternal Mayhem, which is the next one I wrote, you'll find that the own origin has come from African origin, how tribals have migrated, how they have intermingled with the genetic details and all. Fine, that was the scientific. It is not that difficult. And about the controversies of cloning, because there's a lot of controversies regarding genetic cloning and how genetic cloning is actually done. People don't read science books for a layman who is not in the specialty. Don't read science books. But here, I have given the details of crime, maybe gone into much more details than Siddhartha has gone in, with a thriller and with the suspense, with the action, with everything going on. And it's spread over nearly most of the places in the world, right from South America to Iran to Bali to Fiji to Punta Cana to Bora Bora to exotic places where beautiful girls are there, and all kinds of things. All the spicy stuff are there to keep the readers engrossed, yet take them to the depth of origin of race and uh, and the genetic science and how genetic research is carried out in laboratories. So when I finished off with that, that was last year. Eternal Mayhem was released, and I was toying with the idea of writing something on mathematics. And there's a lovely lady who actually approached, and she's from Australia, uh, mm, Paromita, and she gave me certain mathematical equations. They were a bit difficult for me to understand, but I thought still I was toying with the idea of writing something on mathematics. Then my friend, Dr. Ashish Chatterjee, one day while we are chatting, he's in the middle of, I think, in a train actually, going from Bombay back to Kolkata. I don't know whether he'll be hearing it, but some stage we'll be hearing it. He gave me a broad idea that these are the areas you could cover in mathematics. Then I started reading, and ultimately I came up with something that might work. I'm not going to give you the details of the book, which is going to be released shortly, but I came up with the details. But finding of it was difficult. Finding a link to the literature and what is it. So ultimately, the day it was at 12:30 or 1 o'clock, I hit the jackpot. It's God's grace that you could combine mathematics with literature. It is difficult. It is difficult mathematics, but I have explained in a very easy way, which you will see in Ashish's introduction. But the fact was equating the two together to bring out uh, the main structure of the story was the most difficulty. And honestly, I can tell you, unless you get a gift of God, these things don't come. Creations are something gift of God. It's not in your hands. And when God gives you the blessings, that's the time. So first of all, before the release, I would like to thank God for the gift He has given me to write this thriller, or rather equate mathematics with literature. And there is a series of murders, I think 13 in Conundrum, each again not with pistol. And one of my disadvantage was that needed a lot of reading, because I had already written Chalk Road, Fulcrum, Pursuit, and Eternal Maim, and there have been numerous murders in all those books, and I could not repeat. So I had to invent new ways of murder. They are available every day in our day-to-day life, but my request to you is, this is for reading purpose only. Please do not apply it in real life. And for heaven's sake, I am not responsible if anyone applies it. I've written in the book that I am not responsible. This is just for entertainment at the end of the day, because science can be applied to literature. In our common day stuff can be used to create dangerous murders. But please do not use this ever, and I am not at all responsible if anyone uses it. Now, coming back to the question of this book, actually, which is called Conundrum, actually, which few people have read it, and I'm very grateful to few people. I'll read out the names who have helped me with the book, with the help. Without their help, I could not have written. The book is dedicated to my childhood friend, Subrata Chatterjee, who is a retired orthopedic surgeon in England. And he has been the source of many ideas of many of my novels. And this I thought of dedicating to you. Obviously, I would like to thank, firstly, the cover page artist, Aditi Chakraborty. She is a talented abstract artist, and basically, whenever she draws cover pages of my books, she thinks, she grasps the whole story and brings her own ways of idea. Thank you, Aditi, for this lovely cover page, which is very untraditional, much like the one Eternal Name which you had drawn. And thank you again for this lovely cover page. Now, coming back to the people who I would like to thank is Ashish Kumar Chatterjee, Anirban Doctor, Dr. Anirban Doctor, the anesthetist, a very senior anesthetist who has helped me, Dr. Debashish Rai, one of the senior most psychiatrists. I'll tell you, because there is a big psychological element with this. There has been serial killings. Now, here the peculiar part of. Let me first finish acknowledging the people. Purnasri Nath, who is a friend of mine. Parthapratim Rai, my elder brother. My colleague anesthetist, Dr. Tapun Kumar Bosu, and one of my professional colleagues, Mr. Prabhat Haldar, and another of my technical colleagues is Mr. Suman Basu. They have been acknowledged in the book. That's the part one of the story. But again, whenever I was thanking, I do not know what peculiar thing, he taught me, a professor of Indian Statistical Institute. He is not a sleuth or a gumshoe. He is hooked by the whoever the murderer is into the crime, and is forced into the crime where the murderer is telling this chap to go and investigate each and every case, actually pulling the person into the scene again, and informing of each murder. Says, stop the murder. I am giving you an open challenge, and you stop the murder. And he can't. Police can't. He can't. That means the murderer is super intelligent. So we are here playing with brains. The brain of one of the brilliant students who is a professor of Indian Statistical Institute versus the murderer who seems to be more brilliant than him. That is the story. If I tell you further, it'll I have to tell you the suspense of the book would go away. But anyway, this has this was the interaction. Numerous murders have been committed, very unconventional methods yet available in day-to-day life. So you read through it, and until the last paragraph, if you can get, if you can sort of discover the murder, then have failed. That's number one. And the second thing is, not everyone is mad. See, everybody serial killers are psycho killers. That's what we see in American literature or American movies or whatever. There's a deep-rooted psychology why the murders are committed. So that's where Devashish Rai has helped me quite a lot, came in the psychological interpretation. I won't give you the details of the psychological interpretation because it is something very deep-rooted psychology. They are normal human beings. They are not psychiatrically abnormal, and usually they have got very high IQs. Say, IQ is 140 to 200. The person I am talking about is IQ of that sort. And why into this model? There is a big psychological background to it, which Devashish has helped me quite a lot. And thank you, Devashish, for helping me with the bits I needed to give it the final touch. One of the things in Western literature I find, most of the things lack a philosophy. I don't want to name, but most of the thrillers lack the basic philosophy in a thriller. Thriller is something suspense, action, finished, and the murderer or the criminal is caught and blah 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 type of stories with some historical basis somewhere basis. But whether you write a philosophical, whether you write a social novel or a thriller or a something, there must be a philosophy. And as a writer, it is not your duty actually to judge that philosophy. It's to put forward to the people what is right and what is wrong and let them decide. Writer can never be committal that what this person is doing is right or if that person is doing is wrong. Leave it up to the readers to make their own inference, giving them all the what should I say, all the ingredients in a platter. So that is as far as as far as the writer's role is concerned. Sometimes writers become too biased. That becomes a political slogan rather than a novel. A good writer can never give a judgment. He will highlight the things and ultimately he will talk about philosophies which, when you close the book, you want to read it again. Because it's a take home message, not for today, not for tomorrow, but for years to come. Anyway, it has been too long. I've been talking about it. And at the end of the day, there are two people I would like to thank before I finish. Ashish, obviously, were numerous pages. And Devashish, I've already of this new techniques of murder in different places. So I have to thank Anirban Doctor. And here there is a lack of copy editors, especially in this part of the world where I live in Eastern Zone. So basically, Punno Srinag and Partha Pratim Rai, my elder brother, they have taken pains of going through the book and pointing out mistakes. In Bengali, I have been lucky enough to get a copy editor who would sort of wipe out pages and pages, said those are not needed, you can finish it in 2 nights. But in English, I have yet to find out. One of the problems is probably my English is a little bit of high standard, which there aren't enough people in Kolkata to deal with that English. And sometimes I find they write Indian English. One of the celebrities one day say, "Whom are you going to write? Whose English are you going to write? Is it be Amit Chaudhary or Shashi Tharoor or some other famous name? Why should I write anyone's English? I'm writing my own English. And it is my style of writing. I'm not there to copy anyone's style. But anyway, that is besides the point. The concept is people have got some certain fixed concepts about how books should be written, who has written, who is famous, and all those kind of things. I'm not a famous man, so it doesn't bother to me at all to follow any track. I can follow my track And honestly, this is my hobby. This is not my profession, my living, whatever. And so it's nearly 25 minutes. I've been talking too long. Anyway, I have to finish within half an hour. But at the end of the day, uh, um, when a writer is remembered for his style, his own concept, his own English, his own style of writing, making it readable to the public. I mean, the basic concept of writing any book is if you finish a chapter, I will pull the reader to the last chapter. That's the trick of the day. If you have read the first chapter and say, I read later on, I'm failed, no matter what good or intellectuals or stuff you have written. Now, coming back to the opening of the book before it, I won't cross more than half an hour. Here's the book here, which has been presented to my publisher, Conundrum. And I will just flip through a few pages. This is not the first page, so that you can see. Dedicated to Subrata Chatterjee, as I have mentioned, who is a childhood friend of mine, orthopedic surgeon, and from my school, and one of our close friends of me and Shashi. We have been doing debates a long time when we were in school. And this is the thing, and this is the acknowledgement of the people. I have actually, if you can see them, yeah, here you go. You can see the people whom I've acknowledged, whose names I've mentioned. And finally, a quote which is in the book. I'll read it to you. Let me wear my specs. I'm gone too old, actually. So this is a song which is from the Astronomy Eighth Light. Now everybody hop on the one, the sounds of the two. It's the third eye vision, five-side dimension. The eighth light is going to shine bright tonight. With this note, I end today's thing. Uh, with this quote, I end today. And have a lovely day. It's bright and sunny here in Gopalpur, and I'm just facing the sea. I couldn't show you the sea because that is getting dark, but have a lovely day. All the best to you who has heard it live and who will hear it later. Take care. All the best. Bye bye.